Hello, I'm Jared.
And I'm Ebony, and this is his.
And hers, 40K.
Yay.
Yay! Today we'll be discussing the Emperor's Legion, Watchers of the Throne. I think in our last podcast we were going to switch over to a Gaunt's Ghost book, but because of some delays and some other issues, we finished that, moved on, and forgot
Finished another book.
Didn't
forget it. I enjoyed it. I was working a lot.
I know.
A lot.
This one's curing the coronavirus.
It's real slowly, apparently. So it's Watchers of the Throne.
Watchers of the Throne, which is a bit of a change from what Ebony has been reading. This is the first time that she's really covered something in what most people call the modern 40K. Gaunt's Ghost taking place about 200 years before, 999 M41, which for about 15 years. Real time was when most of 40K took place.
I guess this is after Gaunt's Ghost.
Yeah. Gaunt's Ghost is a historical book.
What about Eisenhorn?
Eisenhorn actually takes place even further back, and I think is because there's a reference in Gaunt's Ghost to Ravenor's writings.
Got it.
And they're like 100 years old at that point. I'm
reading the future now.
Well, you're almost reading the future. There's now a new era called the Dark Imperium, which takes place about 100 years after this book.
I'm not ready for that.
Okay. But Watchers of the Throne was very much released as the introduction to this new era. Like, this is the big change, at least for the people who didn't get a chance to read the Gathering Storm books.
I like it. I don't love bureaucracy, so...
See, I do. I thought all of...
like the politics.
The whole opening politics among the High Lords and trying to bring in the Custodes out of Terra, which... There's sort of a mix between the Custodes that have been on Terra the whole time and those that haven't.
Are there Custodians who haven't been on Terra?
Yes, and it's not so much as a retcon because we really didn't know that much about the Custodes to begin with. But traditionally, all Custodes stayed on Terra. But Games Workshop released a codex for them, and they sort of backfilled that information with, there have been these small forces of Custodes all throughout the galaxy. They're a group known as the Emperor's Eyes, I believe.
Well, I mean, they weren't always on Terra. When the Emperor was actively battling across the galaxy, he took the Custodians with him, right?
That's correct. So, they were the Emperor's companions.
Right.
Which sort of leads into our next character, Valerian.
He's very cool, or at least that's how I've been saying it in my mind. That could be incorrect.
No, I think that's right.
Yeah, he's kind of cool and reliable. I like it. I like his reliability. He's just like, I'm going to do this thing. And then he goes and does it.
Yep.
He does everything in a very chill manner. But then there's a lot of aggressive murdering, which apparently he loves.
I mean, so the Custodes are interesting in that way because of how reliable they are, because they see that as a major contrast to the Space Marines.
Yeah, he does talk a lot about how his Space Marine little cousins are just crazy, and how they were always prepared to murder them all because they're batshit crazy. In his mind, they're just these crazy berserkers that all Custodians have just been prepared to have to murder them.
Yep, and so part of that is because they see the Astartes as just an extension of what the Thunder Warriors were, which the Custodes did all murder.
Yes. Yeah, so they're ready to murder Astartes, and he's cool about it, and he doesn't. And I guess that's kind of a big question, right? Do we trust the Emperor? Is he going to murder all of the Astartes and Primarchs and maybe Custodians?
Well, now we're getting back into Horus Heresy territory. And at this point, I don't think that really matters, given where the Emperor currently is.
I guess he's not going to murder anyone from trapped on the throne. That's not necessarily true. I bet if he wanted to murder someone, he could.
So, what I wanted to bring up was Valerian was originally chosen to be one of the Emperor's 300 companions.
Oh, yeah, and it was really sad because he couldn't do it. You have to, walk across this threshold of psychic
I mean, you basically need to be able to enter the inner throne room.
Which I didn't know that was a thing, that like people couldn't do it, because I thought like priests of Mars go in there and fix things.
No, so they actually go underneath. Like the Golden Throne itself is this enormous structure that has like dozens and dozens of stories, like both behind and underneath it. And if you ever get around to reading Carrion Throne, you'll figure out more about that.
Okay. Yeah, and like Guilliman goes in there towards the end of this book and is in there for a long time and comes out looking old, which is just suspicious foreshadowing, I guess.
Well, so in another book, you get sort of a glimpse of what happened in there, and essentially the Emperor spoke to him. But the Emperor in this current state speaks to people by literally shooting a giant psychic lance of energy into their brain. It's not a great experience.
Sound great, yeah. Yeah, so Valerian is trying to walk into this room and he can't. He feels this, like, I guess, existential dread and, like, physical pushback. And he's like, nope, I can't do that. And then he's really sad because he thinks that, like, he's a bad custodian.
It's a major failure.
Yeah, he thinks he's a bad custodian. And he's like, well, damn.
I mean, the role of the 300, like, what he would have gone...
They just stand there and stare at the Emperor,
It's
right?
Royal Palace guards.
Okay.
Like, they don't stare at the Emperor, they stare, like, away.
Yeah, because lance of psychic energy into your brain.
Right. And they don't move. And I believe the longest a Custodes has ever gone in that role was a century.
That's a long time to just stand next to the Emperor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because of that, he now has other roles.
Yeah. Except in the background of all this, which I don't love when books do this, but I think it was done pretty well.
The switching between the three characters.
I don't love that as a mechanism of novel presenting.
Right, because you like a single perspective.
Yeah.
And just sort of focused on that.
Yeah.
Which, for horror books that you tend to like, I think that works much better. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, in the background, Tiernan, right, who is sort of the secretary to the High Lords of Terra, is trying to bring about the release of the custodians from Terra to go to Cadia, because Abaddon is...
The 13th Black Crusade is in full swing.
Wrecking Cadia.
I can't remember if they were worded at the time, but it's the 5th year into the 13th.
I don't know. I think that time is a problem. Like, they're having a problem.
Time is always a problem.
Time's a problem. Cadia is being wrecked. They're, like, chucking forces into this meat grinder, and they're not coming back.
Yep.
And they're like, let's just send some custodians. But apparently that's a thing that's never been done before. So the rest of the High Lords are like, nah.
So part of that is because of something known as the Lex Imperialis, which is, like, the high laws of the Imperium that everyone is supposed to follow and that are divinely mandated. And one of those is that the Custodes must remain on Terra, but that either the High Lords or a Primarch has the ability to revoke that. And so that's what they're arguing over, is trying to get the Custodes off of Terra, and they almost have all the votes, but there's an empty seat.
Right, and so Tiernan gives that empty seat to the Captain General of the Custodes, whose name I can't remember now, and who is not a main character, really. But he gives that seat to him in the hopes that he can convince him to say yes.
Right. Like the idea is, we're giving you this seat so you can vote on something that will give yourself more power.
Yeah. And he assumes that he's going to say yes. And it's sort of very dramatic in that voting in the room. And he says no. But right at the second that he says no, like, people come pouring in and they say, like, the Cadian gate has fallen and the Astronomicon is dark. And, oh my God, it's like, it's going down right now. And, and then I don't know that anyone ever addresses that vote, because it would have failed.
Pretty much.
Yeah, because the Custodian voted not to release the Custodian. He was basically kind of like, we don't care about you guys. Like, we do what the Emperor tells us to do.
So it's not, it's with the new Custodes Codex, we have a lot more nuance to this, which is that, over the last 10,000 years, as new captain generals have come and gone, they've each interpreted the statements of the Emperor, or like the views of the Emperor, slightly differently. Yeah. And so where the Custodes have actually patrolled and guarded has sort of waxed and waned over time. Like, the more orthodox ones pull all their forces back to, like, just the Imperial Palace, nothing else on Terra.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, within these physical walls.
Yeah.
But others have interpreted it as like, oh, we have to defend all of Terra.
Yeah.
And others have to send, well, the whole Sol system is what they care about. So they have starships and bases throughout the Sol system. And then others have said, well, we have to guard the paths leading into the Sol system. So I think there's 4 major like gates, warp conduits that can lead into the Sol system, and the Custodes had forces there too. But that's all sort of come like in and out
based on who is the captain general.
Based on who's the captain general.
Yeah, and this one seems like he's not about that spreading.
He's not.
Yeah.
No. He was definitely more conservative in his views.
Yeah, but then that vote didn't matter because we were suddenly at war and the Astronomicon was dark and literal demons were on the planet.
Yep. The broader view of this is with the fall of the Cadian Gate, the Eye of Terra basically shot out this crazy like line of a warp storm that will go on to become something called the Great Rift.
Oh, yeah.
The whole galaxy is split in half.
Yeah, also, like, the sky is red and it's raining blood. Everything's fine. This is fine.
What's going on related to that is originally it wasn't going to, like, swerve into Terra.
Mm-hmm.
Angeron and the Cornate forces felt that this would be the moment to strike against the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
The other 3 Chaos Gods weren't super on board with that, which is why what we really only saw later in this book when Terra is assaulted and you have the Bloodthirsters and this huge demons. They're all Cornate demons. Like, it's only the forces of Corn that show
I didn't really pick up on that. I guess because, right, so all of this is happening and it's terrible and forces are fighting and soldiers are fighting. And then also, like, there's fighting happening on the moon. And Tiernan, who, like, is like a fat old dude in like, I don't know, what I guess is a cool move for a fat old dude is like, I'm going to get in a ship and go see what's happening on the moon with my personal eyes. And like his adjutant is like, what?
Yeah, I remember that was sort of unusual.
Yeah, she's like, no, you're not. You're going to die. And he's like, no, we're going to do it. She's like, I guess I have to go. It's my job. Also, then they're banging. Separate.
Well, no, at that point, they're all in like,
crazy mode. Yeah, like everyone is like
post-apocalyptic mode. Like,
so they're banging out of necessity. Right. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to go look on the moon with my personal eyes. And she's like, yeah, I guess, whatever. So they get there and Guilliman is on the moon having slayed the crap out of some enemy that they very vaguely described to you.
Do you know who that enemy was?
I have no idea who it is.
Magnus the Red.
Oh, I like Magnus.
All of that, everything that was going on is detailed in The Gathering Storm.
But, like, also, did no one know that a giant war was happening on the moon until right that second?
It didn't last that long. Like, that...
So Guilliman just showed up there right then, put the hammer down, Magnus is gone.
Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it took maybe a week from in the war room, like, oh crap, the Astronomicon is out, to Tiernan actually getting on the ship and being on the moon.
Yes.
Okay.
And that whole thing, because what you learn in The Gathering Storm is there was an unused webway portal on the moon. And that was how Guilliman ends up being there. Gotcha. Magnus at this point is reveling off of a major campaign that just finished on Fenris. So there was a whole other thing going on with Fenris where the Thousand Suns attacked there. They wiped out Midgardia, which was like one of their other worlds that they sort of pull recruits from. Okay. And this whole huge ritual occurs that allows them to bring Sortiaris, which is the planet of the sorcerers. It's basically the world that they fled to
when their home world got burned.
Right. Yep.
Right.
Sortiaris is a total demon world.
Okay.
You know, they can't normally exist outside of the warp without a lot of help. This whole ritual allowed them to shift Sortiaris, the whole planet.
To the moon?
No.
It's like
up to, I think, pretty close to where Prospero is.
Okay.
And then later on, this allowed Magnus to sort of solidify control of an entire sector that is just now theirs.
Right.
And so as part of that, he goes out to try and assault Terra and is met by Guilliman.
Who's not about it.
Right.
Yeah. And so they win, and, like, old fat Tiernan is there, and Guilliman's like, you're that secretary dude, right? Set up a meeting for me. And now he works for Guilliman. Like, that's happening. And then all the rest of the High Lords, like, freak out because they're like, oh crap, Gilliman is going to take over Terra and like ban the Lex Imperialis and like be the new emperor, and we don't want that because we want to be in power. Meanwhile, Valerian has taken a ship to go and get Alea, the Sister of Silence.
So Alea is the third character that we haven't really spoken about.
She's awesome.
Alea is very cool. And this is... I'm trying to think if she's the first Sister of Silence character in modern 40k ever. I think she might be, because I can't think of any others.
So I guess we cheated, because the book, I think, actually starts with in her perspective, right? Yeah. Like, she was on her ship with her crew out doing something, and she's returning home to Aracia, I think, which is where her convent of Sisters of Silence were. And at this point, the Sisters of Silence, not a big deal anymore. I missed that part because I skipped over this part of Warhammer, right? They got disbanded and kicked out of Terra. They basically got disbanded by neglect, really, right? Like,
we don't really know a huge amount about how they got disbanded, but the theories are with the rise of the ecclesiarchy and like
they just kind of
Imperial
neglected
Cult,
keeping them a thing.
From a theological perspective, it was viewed like these people have no souls.
Right.
Like, they are not something that we want in this Imperium.
Right. So a Sister of Silence, which is a name that she hates, is...
It's sort of like how, well, the Space Wolves hate being called the Space Wolves.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's a translation into an inappropriate language that doesn't really capture the meaning.
Yeah. So they are psychic nulls, and so demons hate them, and also humans hate them, which I don't really understand, because humans don't love the warp, but the absence of the warp makes humans feel uncomfortable. So, like, when normal humans are near a null, they feel sick. Like, they just feel uncomfortable, right? So,
and you recall that from Eisenhorn.
Yeah, and I read the first Beta Beckwin book, which is, it's her story.
It's the third trilogy.
Yeah. And so, but also the Sisters of Silence are like badass warriors too. Yeah. So not only are they psychic nulls that demons hate, they're like super amazing fighters. And so she was off doing a thing. She comes back to Erasia and her like convent is destroyed. Like all of her sisters are dead. And she's like going through what you're supposed to do when you come back and find this, right? And like she has to fight a demon. So she fights this demon and she kills it. And then she gets on her ship and tries to... So the last thing that happens in her convent is that their astropath leaves a message in his own blood on the door. And that message is he, capital H, so the Emperor, calls his daughters home, right? And so she interprets that as she needs to make all speed for Terra. Right? So she gets back in her ship, except the Astronomicon is broken. So she's basically flying blind in the crazy warp, and it's killing her navigator, whose name I don't remember either. But he's kind of a punk ass, and she's like, I don't care. You fly through this warp. And so they have created this crazy pattern where they're like in the warp. Also, their Geller field is failing, which is what keeps demons out of your ship, right? So they're in the warp for as long as they can be, and while they're in the warp, literal demons are breaking into their ship, so the whole crew has to repel demons, and then they crash back out of the warp, try to repair, and then go back in.
Before you go further, I found what's really interesting is when she's fighting the demons. So most normal humans, when they view demons, are sort of this deeply affected on like a spiritual level just by witnessing them. And this always sort of contrasted with how people see the models, like the physical miniatures. And you look at them and you think, oh, if I saw that thing in real life, it would be creepy, but I wouldn't like feel my soul leaving my body. And part of that I think this captures really well is demons in the Materium have this aura around them that you can't capture in like a physical model that affects humans on such a deep level and actually allows them to it gets into their psyche and into their soul, and so that even if you kill the demon and like banish it,
you feel it. You are tainted.
You are tainted. It's a mix between you are tainted. It's like you are still thinking about it. Like if you are present when a demon of Nurgle is banished, like you might continue to hear this fly buzzing noise for the rest of your life.
Right.
Which is how new cult activity starts.
Happens, yeah.
Because the fly buzzing can turn into whispers,
Yeah.
which can turn into you calling friends, and suddenly you're the leader of a cult on some backwater
It's
world.
a permanent sort of stain on your soul from interacting with the demon, which can be trained out of you because she has soldiers who are with her that are trained by Sisters of Silence, and they can sort of resist a little bit. But even those soldiers will fail eventually.
Right.
But she doesn't have that. She's just like, this thing is gross and it's covered in snot and I'm going to kill it.
Yep. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Because she's basically seeing what the models represent alone.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah, it's not that bad. It's real gross, though. I'm going to kill it. But she takes from Arisa, which I didn't mention, a map.
So the map was from the cults that they...
That's right. She was fighting a cult, and she took something with her back and didn't really get a chance to look at it until they were doing this warp thing. And it appears to be a map of the warp, which physical maps of the warp are not a thing because it's
constantly shifting.
It's constantly changing, and it's a three-dimensional time-space thingamabob.
Yep.
So you can't map it. But also this map happens to be on some suspicious skin, and it has parts of it that glows, and she doesn't know what it is. But she convinces her navigator to maybe try and use this map to do their in and out of the warp business. And he's like, first of all, that thing is evil. Don't be using that. Secondly, we're going to die. And she's like, I don't care. Keep doing it. So they're doing it for as long as they can.
So that map, when I first read that, that made me really happy. Because in the current 8th edition, which now takes place after everything has happened, there is a map, and there's sort of the traditional 40K galaxy map that they've been using over and over again. But a new one came out with 8th edition, which includes the Great Rift on it. That map is the map that has the Great Rift already on it, and is basically... so when the Astronomicon goes out, warp travel becomes very difficult, the Great Rift splits the galaxy in half. This map was basically given out to Chaos cells and cults throughout the galaxy, saying, here's what the warp is going to look like at this time.
Gotcha. That's convenient if you're the enemy.
Right.
Yeah. So they're trying to figure that out. And basically, in their last transit in the warp, their ship is 100% falling apart. They have no Geller field. The navigator's crying blood tears, and all of his junior navigator associates have died. Literal demons are on the ship, and they're fighting them. And some other ship shows up and saves them. Basically puts their ship in its hold, and she's like, oh, what's happening? And that ship has Valerian on it.
Right.
And he's like, my boss told me to go out and find all these Sisters of Silence and bring them home.
I can't remember. Was that one of the 3 Custodes battleships?
I think so. I think it's his, because it's the ship in the end. I think it's his battleship that he takes over at the end.
So the Custodes only have, they have smaller forces, but they have 3 battleships that they have, a specific name for them. And it's throughout all of history, never has all 3 of them ever left the Sol system.
So he gets her, and in a very funny coincidence, she doesn't know what he is right away and tries to kill him. And he's like, hey, maybe her weapon at the time is a flamer. So she lights demons on fire. And he's like, hey, maybe don't immolate me. I have some news for you. But very calmly. He's like, if you would please refrain from lighting me on fire, I will tell you what's going on. And so she goes with him, and they're returning to Terra and training. And there are other Sisters of Silence on the ship that she hasn't seen. And sort of very interestingly, they're all individual separate cells that run themselves.
Well, there's 2 types.
Right, there's the Black Ship Sisters.
There's the Black Ship Sisters, who were sort of more integrated into the rest of Imperium.
Right, their job is to catch psychers and feed them to the Golden Throne, right?
Well, not just feed them to the Golden Throne, also to feed them to the Astronomicon, to train them to the Scholastica Psychana.
Generally,
to hand them out to chapters for their librarians, all sorts of stuff. Which is interesting to confirm, because in the Horus Heresy, we knew the Sisters of Silence ran the Black Ships. They had the Black Ship League. But it was always a question about who was running the Black Ships after the Sisters of Silence was disbanded. Because until this book, we didn't even know the Sisters of Silence still existed in any
modern
capacity.
40K.
Yeah, in modern 40K. So they were we sort of got, okay, so there are these cells elsewhere. Who's running the Black Ships? In really old lore, before the Sisters of Silence were even a thing, before the Horus Heresy lore was a thing, it stated that they basically just had the more highly trained soldiers, like what the sisters had on their ship.
Yeah.
And they just used like really powerful drugs and sort of counter psychers, like their own psychers to suppress the psychers that they picked up.
Okay.
Which I always found that more interesting than just, we have the Sisters of Silence run this. Like, it made sense in the Horus Heresy because they have the forces. They can do it the cleanest and most straightforward approach. You use blanks. But I kind of like this sort of jerry-rigged approach of
anti-psychic psychers
and like powerful drugs that you just inject into them, and like materials that you have to like line the walls with, like whatever you had.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of preferred that.
Yeah, and the Black Ship sisters are a little more conservative, I guess.
Yeah.
Politically than the sort of individual convent sisters.
Right.
And so she befriends another Sister of Silence.
From a convent.
From another convent.
Yeah.
Risa, something
I'm
like that.
I'm terrible at names.
Yeah, something like that. And that becomes important because they get back to Terra. They have to fight a whole bunch of demons because literally the earth is covered in demons. The demons are assaulting this gate, the Lion's Gate on Terra.
So when we eventually get to the Siege of Terra series, the Lion's Gate is a very, very, very famous incident.
That did not impress me as being super important because I never heard of it before. I was like, I guess this is an important thing that you want to take if you're an invading army.
Extremely important.
It seemed like it was kind of next to the throne, so maybe don't take that.
It's the most straightforward approach into
the palace.
To the palace.
Okay. Yeah, so they're trying to take this Lion's Gate with a whole bunch of demons, and so the rest of and interestingly, where they land, Valerian with his like cadre of Sisters of Silence and a couple of his custodian brothers is like right in the middle of a circle of demons, and so they're fighting alone for a really long time against this tide of bloodthirsters. But who joins them? Then the Grey Knights join them.
Show up.
Yeah, but then they're still all alone. So the Grey Knights were like leading a little push in an underground place to get rid of like a cult. Yeah. Some sort of cult was happening underground, and Grey Knights were there. And once they get above ground, the Sisters of Silence have landed there with Valerian. So it's Grey Knights and other custodians, and then they land Valerian and Alea and their team. And so they make a little circle that is pushing through this sort of tide of demons until the Captain General and the rest of the custodians can get there, so they kind of like smush the demons between them. But Alea saves Valerian's life, and he decides that he's never going to let her die, which is sweet and random. Like, he's just I guess I'm going to protect this human.
I liked the contrast between them and like their friendship.
Yeah, because she hates him for a long time. He's like, hey, let me help you with this map thing. And she's like, I hate you. You've been on Terra and just doing nothing, and we've just been banished out here alone. Yeah. And like, she just is like,
they're in such opposite worlds.
Yeah, she's like, look at all your fancy armor. Like, meanwhile, I'm making my own armor. And like, she just like curses at him regularly, and he's just like,
in sign language.
Yes, it's aggressive sign language. Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, but apparently all custodians speak fluent thought mark because they were trained to work together, which is kind of cool to see. And he discusses that during their battle. Like, they wouldn't have made it as far if they didn't have the Sisters of Silence with them because their presence like scares the crap out of demons, and it makes them physically weak.
Now, when both of them were fighting alongside the Grey Knights, that to me was very cool.
Yeah, and hard for the Grey Knights because they fight psychically.
Yeah, the Grey Knights, their psychic powers are their biggest benefit.
And they can't use them in the presence of the Sisters of Silence.
Right.
Right, so everyone's fighting kind of regularly except for the Sisters of Silence, who get to fight anti-psychically.
So there is another force that uses sort of blanks and pariahs, and that's the Calexis assassin temple.
Yeah.
But their psychic presence is not like this aura around them that just blocks them. Theirs is that sort of focused into basically a head cannon that they can use to annihilate psychers.
Okay.
And they were sort of the other organization that got funneled nulls as they were found.
Yeah. So that battle is really cool, and Alea saves Valerian's life by like slicing a demon in the Achilles tendon. Like, he's like fighting. He's fighting this giant demon.
He's fighting a bloodthirster.
Yeah, and it punches him into a metal wall that like breaks all of his bones.
So I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of. So a bloodthirster is.
It was described kind of like a giant dragon bat.
It's the most traditional image of Satan you can imagine.
Okay, it had horns and black leathery wings.
Yep, and like cloven feet and huge wings and an enormous axe, or sometimes a whip.
It was I want to say it was a hammer and not an axe.
Oh, was it a hammer?
Yeah, because like when she saves him,
works too.
It's going to hammer Valerian, and she like knifes it in the ankle with her greatsword, which is the weapon she chose while she was on the ship with Valerian because her flamer got abused, right? So now she has this giant ass sword, and she knifes it in the ankle, and it makes it falter, and then like Valerian can kill it. Yeah, that's exactly what I was imagining. Giant dragon bat with horse feet.
And I believe there were 8 of them that were just sort of like
around.
8, of course, being the favorite number of corn.
Huh.
Anything 8 related, he's very big on that.
Cool.
He's got, his 8 favored bloodthirsters who lead his 8 legions of 888 demons.
It's very 8 specific.
He is. The other gods are like that too with their own numbers.
Okay.
Tzeentch is 9, Nurgle is 7, Slaanesh is 6.
Yeah, so she saves his life, and he's like, well, I guess I'm not going to let her die. And then finally, the rest of, like, the custodian guard and the guards who are guarding the palace, like, get into the fray, and they save them, right? Like, because they almost die, obviously. And they go back to the palace, and everyone gets repaired. But also in the palace, they're like, crap, they're Sisters of Silence here now, and nobody likes them, so let's just put them in this old-ass, dank basement.
Yep.
So they just, like, chuck them in the basement, which is rude.
So it's because the Ecclesiarchy is still one of the most powerful organizations. Yes. Like, the Imperial Cult is so ingrained into everything about the Imperium, except the Custodians themselves.
Yeah.
That their presence is so against everything that people have believed.
Yeah.
And the idea of the Imperial Talons, which was the combination of the Custodians and the Sisters of Silence, is not a thing.
Yeah. So Valerian gets better because, he's a custodian and they have magical genetics.
Ooh, actually, I do remember he had a really interesting thought where he was contrasting how the Grey Knights were sort of seen as the Emperor's chosen weapon against chaos.
Yeah.
And they are 100% Psyker focused. The Custodes, though, were sort of his, almost like a personal project.
Yeah.
And Custodes can never be Psykers. Which I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Like, there's no such thing as a Psyker custodian. Where Space
Probably because he's going to kill all the Psykers.
That was the ultimate...
Yeah.
No, so he wasn't going to kill all the Psykers. He was going to move them into the webway.
Okay.
Where basically the connection to the
humanity would be solidified, right?
Like, the focus would be among humanity. When you're in the webway, you're kind of protected from chaos.
Gotcha.
Except for the Dark Eldar, that's a whole other story. And the idea was, as the Emperor knew that humanity was turning into a fully psychic race, and in the current lore, which is in sort of the period past this, it's an event known as the Psychic Awakening, where literally the number of Psykers across the galaxy is exploding.
Okay.
And individual planets don't know what to do with this, especially those that don't have black ship access anymore. Or planets that are under the control of, like, other Xenos are trying to figure out what to do with this. And it's causing all sorts of chaos.
Gotcha.
Literally and figuratively.
Okay.
The Emperor's goal was, knowing that was going to happen, move all of humanity into the webway, where they would become a psychic race, where they could have access to these psychic powers without the worry of chaos.
Right. Which, fine, makes sense. Yeah, so then Valerian goes to visit Alea because she's recovering obviously more slowly, but still pretty fast. So he goes to visit her and she's like, I hate you, because that's how their relationship is. Yeah, she's like, I hate you and your stupid gold armor. Get out of my dank cave. and he's like, I'm going to protect you for the rest of your life. And she's like, you're an idiot. And also, I have this map. And he's like, hey, I know that place, and that place, and that place. And she's like, you can read this map? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, also, I think this is a map of how you attack Terra. And she's like, shit, maybe we should tell someone about this. And he's like, I know a dude we should tell about this, and that dude is Tiernan. And
Yep.
now all of our characters
are together.
So they go to Tiernan, and they're like, this sucks. This is a map of how you attack Terra. And he's like, shit, this is a map of how you attack Terra. What do we do? And like Alea is like, obviously what we do is we like lead a crusade to go to the nearest world, which is Valdes, something like that. Starts with a V.
One of the worlds that connects to Sol.
Yeah. And so she's like, obviously this is what you do. You send Sisters of Silence and soldiers and custodians, like you send everybody, and you save this world. And he's like, yeah, we're literally fighting. We were just fighting demons outside. Like the like leaders of Terra are not going to approve you sending all of our warriors to a random world that's not here to protect it because you found some map on skin that only this dude can read. And she's like, well, screw it. We'll do it anyway because I don't even like Terra. I don't believe in your laws, and also your planet's shit. Literally the whole time she's there, she's like, is this what I've been like a random like orphan for? This planet sucks. It's dirty, and everyone has shiny shit. I hate it. Like she hates it.
I was talking online to someone recently, and they started up a thread where their first line was, "It's common. I assume it's common knowledge in the Imperium that Terra is not a nice place." And I was like, nope. The whole Imperium believes that Terra is like this perfect utopian paradise.
And they get there and are disappointed. So Alea's wildly disappointed. She's like, that's cool. I don't care. I'm going to leave. And Tiernan is like, you can't because that's illegal because they put a cordon in place, right? No ships in or out of Terra are happening. And he's like, you literally can't. That's illegal. And she's like, I don't care about your laws. I'm going to leave. And in a wild change of custodian behavior, Valerian is like, yeah, she's right. Let's go. And Tiernan's like, what? And he's like, yeah, we got to do this. And he's like, all right, I guess we have to do this. I will figure out, I'll do some of my magical secretary things and figure out a way to get you off this planet. But probably you should take some soldiers with you because the two of you probably not going to hold the whole world.
No.
And so Alea goes back to her dank cave and recruits that other like convent Sister of Silence, Risa, and a bunch of other 25 other Sisters of Silence. And Valerian goes and recruits 5 or 6 custodians, which doesn't sound like a lot, but is a lot of custodians apparently.
Like normally custodes outside of Sol operate in one.
Yeah. But that's true in an opening scene in the book where like there's a small uprising of what might be a cult because like chaos energy is seeping onto Terra. Valerian.
And that was something else that I liked that the Custodes Codex covered, which is there was sort of this belief that like, oh, there's all these defenses in Terra and there's so much there and like you never have to worry about it. Terra is constantly under attack. There are thousands of Chaos cults, of Xenos cults, of democracy cults.
And then, like, general restless humans. Yeah. I mean, they're starving, right?
That's dealt more with the Adeptus Arbites, which is a different group.
Yeah.
And, like, there's always things attacking Terra.
So there's, like, this cult uprising, and I'm saying little, but I mean, like, you know, probably a couple 100,000 humans.
Yeah.
And like, Valerian is there with, like, the Arbites leader who like is in charge of that sector, and he's like, just drop me. He's like, just drop me down here. And the guy's like, what? And he's like, it'll be fine, just drop me down here. And he like drops him in the middle of this like uprising, and everyone just freaks out and runs away, and it's fine. Like, and he takes their leader and like puts him in prison, and like it's perfectly fine. So 5 custodians is a lot of custodians, but at the same time. So when they leave each other, Alea and Valerian's like, I'll be back with the ship and it'll be fine. And Alea's like, all right. And then later she's talking to herself and she's like, should I just be believing this dude that I met? And she's like, yeah, but I mean, he always shows up on time, so I guess I'm just going to buy it. So she gets her like crappy ship, which I think is called the Cadmara. That was her ship that was in the warp. And like 20 other Sisters of Silence. And they like escape. And as soon as you take off of Terra, like the rest of the FAA of Terra is like, where are you going? Does not happen. So like ships start like training their guns on them or whatever. And so she's like, crap, I planned this whole thing and we're definitely going to get shot right out of the sky. And Valerian shows up with his ship and just eats their ship and it's fine. Pulling me into the frame.
Yes.
And he shows up with their ship and just eats their ship and it's fine. And she's like, yep, I guess he does show up on time. And like, they disembark inside his ship, and she's like, "This is it. You brought 5 dudes," and he's like, "It'll be fine.
Yep.
This is enough dudes." And so then they make speed for Volo, starts with a V. That's what we're calling it.
Okay.
Planet that starts with a V. And they get there, and the whole planet's falling apart. It is wildly under attack by Chaos forces and like evil Astartes.
So I can't remember how much time has passed at this point because I don't remember. So the Astronomicon falling is an event known as the Noctis Aeterna, which...
Of course it has a name in High Gothic. Everything has a High Gothic name.
Yes.
Sure.
It's so they can copyright it. It lasts, I think, 30 Terran days.
Yeah.
Which, for the rest of the Imperium, like, millions upon millions of ships are lost in the warp.
I mean, it's probably about 2 weeks, right? Because they get out of Terra pretty quickly. So it's probably been about 2 weeks.
I guess I'm just trying to remember if, like, they can get there without meeting the Astronomicon.
I think it's within a... Like, it's... You jump there, and then you can see Terra from there. Because when they're talking...
Oh, it's one jump.
Yeah.
They can probably do it without the Astronomicon.
Yeah. So, like, when they're talking to Tiernan about it, like, Alea is like, this is a big deal because why aren't they shooting at us? Like, you can see us from this planet. Like, you can see Earth from this planet. Why aren't they shooting at us? Or whatever. And so they go, and obviously on the planet, there's a whole fall to chaos or whatever. But also above this planet is, like, a giant ship thing that they need to take because it is pumping out null energy and they don't know what it is. So they have to assault this space thing that's hanging above this planet. And so they make this huge assault with, 20 Sisters of Silence and 5 Custodians. And at the heart of this ship is a giant black shard over a hole.
It is a chunk of black stone.
Yeah, and apparently, according to Alea, it's a chunk of physical psychic nullness that if they drop onto this planet will turn off its warp beacon and make this planet dark.
So Blackstone was what kept Cadia as this gate into the Eye of Terra.
Right, they used it to solidify that gate. But if you drop it on a planet, it'll make that planet dead.
So Abaddon and the Black Legion were able to weaponize it in this capacity. Because what prior Black Crusades were doing, in addition to other goals, was finding these other ruins that were made of blackstone and either destroying them or collecting them. And the idea was when it's sort of like if you have a dam and then you have a bunch of smaller dams later down.
Okay.
If you destroy the main dam, all the water's going to rush out and it's probably going to be stopped by one of those lesser ones. The prior Black Crusades were destroying all the lesser dams so that when the main one was destroyed, which was Cadia, the Great Rift spread all the way across the galaxy.
Gotcha.
Rather than being stopped at some point partway.
Yeah. So it's like chained to this ship and it's going to fall on this planet and like destroy its warp jump place. Also, if it's destroyed, ships won't be able to leave Terra to go out and fight against evil because they won't be able to transit the warp there.
The idea is all of the warp conduits leading out of Terra would be blocked.
And also there were like 6 of them and this is the only one that's still, they have destroyed all the other ones. This is the last one.
We do know, so over time, I think in current era, like 100 years later, they have managed to restore 2 others. Okay. Something like that. So
this is the last one. So they get on board and they basically like fuse the chains that are holding this thing up so that like they can't drop it on this planet. But that means that they're on a ship full of evil Astartes. Yep. And demons occasionally. And like
so the Black Legion at this point is enormous and it is said regularly rivaling the legions of old, which in old lore meant that they were 10,000 strong, but now it means they might be 100,000 strong, but they might be even more than that. It's a whole thing. A crap ton of evil Astartes. Right, and so basically they lock themselves in this chamber that has the chain, right, and like everyone is dying because they're getting assaulted from both sides and they just have to hold this place. And so they're fighting and it just ends up with like Valerian and Alea like back to back, like fighting off like Chaos Space Marines to hold this gate. And they think they're about to die, and who shows up? You know. I do. You do? You don't know? I know a thing that you don't know. I know who shows up. Go ahead.
And Guilliman shows up.
I had a feeling.
Yeah, with Ultramarines and like other regular soldiers, and also Tiernan, because he made him a Remembrancer, which I don't know that Tiernan. Well, I guess Tiernan knew what a Remembrancer was, but most people don't know what that is.
In his role, he would know what that is. Do you make him a Remembrancer, or did you make him like part of his new order? I don't remember.
He made him. He said it like the Remembrancers of old.
Okay, so they're basically an anti-Inquisition force. Mm-hmm. Where their goal is to travel the galaxy
and record the truth.
Yes.
Yeah, so like he wants someone to record what's happening, and he makes that person Tiernan, who I don't know that he's fit for traveling in space, but he's doing it. And so Guilliman shows up because he's like, they know that starts with a V is under assault, and that if they lose it, it's bad. So Guilliman, who is now acting like regent of Terra, right, is like, all right, we're gonna I'm gonna take soldiers and I'm gonna take this planet no matter what the High Council says. And he leaves, and he, through magical Primarch powers, I'm sure he's aware that Tiernan has sent Alea and Valerian there, and it's illegal, but he doesn't kill him because he wants to keep it from falling. So they get there to save him, to save them, and he says like they deserve better than dying as martyrs, so if we think they're still alive in there, we're gonna go get them.
Right.
So they fight their way in through bad Astartes, and they save them. They have to like cart them out because they're mostly dead, but they don't die. But they have to like cart them out on stretchers, literally, and then Guilliman and the Ultramarines like take back this planet. So there's still like a whole crusade that has to go on to like take this planet back from chaos.
I can't remember. Are
forces.
there Primaris at this time?
I don't know what that is.
Okay. So actually, I don't think they are. Yeah, not yet. Guilliman's arrival, he sort of came with a whole force with him, which is made up of the Ultramarines that were with him, some Black Templars, a Grey Knight, an Inquisitor that is from M34. Long story.
Okay.
And an Imperial Saint.
Okay. Oh yeah, there was like on the moon there was like an angel lady with a halo that no one bothered describing, and I was like, okay.
All of that is in a completely different story.
Got it.
And there might be some strange
travel?
hate. No, not time travel.
Oh.
So the quick version of that backstory is on Cadia.
Okay.
There was a Necron Lord, Trazyn the Infinite, who was a fantastic character for lots of different reasons. He felt, I'm going to be the hero this time, or I'm going to try to be the hero. And Trazyn has an entire museum of shit throughout all of history, essentially, that he goes around, collects things, puts them in stasis. Like, he's got Ultramarines and Wordbearers from the Battle of Calth in stasis, posed in combat.
Okay.
Like, he does these whole dioramas that are like tens of miles in size.
Okay.
And so he decided to release some of his creations onto Cadia to help with the war effort.
Okay.
And one of those was, I think her name was Inquisitor Greyfax, is the Inquisitor from M34. And then the Imperial Saint, she's like a living saint, who Greyfax is 100% convinced is a demon of some sort, but also might secretly love her.
Weird.
Yeah.
Super weird.
Who else? He also released some Custodes. He released some Tanith, I believe, who at that point are long dead.
Yes.
Yeah, Trazyn's got all sorts of cool stuff.
Cool. And so now they're with Guilliman, and they help him save, starts with a V, and also Valerian and Alea. And they get them back to Terra, because they need doctors really badly. And that's kind of it. The world is saved.
And the world is saved.
Yay.
Yay.
That's it.
And so that was Watchers of the Throne.
Yeah. The
first book in the Emperor's Legion, which we recently learned the second one is either out or is just about to be out, which should be good, so we'll get that eventually.
Yeah.
But I think for now, our next book is going to be The Solar War. This one wanted to jump ahead.
I want to know what's happening on
Terra. She's at a point where I think that's okay.
Yeah.
So I've started reading it. She's about to start reading it.
I want Emperor versus Horus now.
You got about 7 books to go.
Damn it.
There's a lot of stuff still to come first.
I want Emperor v. Horus.
No.
Like, I want 7 books of that.
That's not happening.
I want, like, a dreamscape where they have a psychic conversation in a room. Just the Emperor and Horus.
That's not happening.
Come on.
Anyway, I think that's a good place to call it.
Yeah.
Until next time.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice.